He may have loved her, but he still thinks that she did it. Last week, we told you that the boyfriend was coming. Before we do anything else, here he is.
Sir, would you like to take a break?
Mr. Grossman, level with me. Do you need a minute or two?
I don't know what I need.
Let's just start with that. Why don't we take pause for a moment, if you don't mind. Let's take a 5-minute break, please. Please rise for the jury.
Sir, is this an accurate depiction of a February 23rd, 2022 text exchange between you and Ms. Richins?
Yes.
I'm Drew. I'm a retired cop of 29 years. John is a dispatcher with 11 years of experience. John, Eric Richins was a husband, a father. He was a business partner to some, a great friend to others. But here's this guy who is the other man in their relationship. This guy came forward on his own. There was no deal, no immunity. I want to talk a little bit about what that means. What's it mean to you that he has come forward?
Well, it means that he's a man that's compelled by his conscience. He's somebody that loves Kouri. When he got on the stand, he was completely emotional when he was having to review the text messages between them. In silence, the jury read them. He was overcome by emotion. At one point, the trial had to stop. The jury was excused. The judge asked him if he needed to use the bathroom or stretch his legs, and he told the judge, it's not the legs that are my problem. It's his heartstrings being pulled. I believe that he still loves Kouri. And in spite of those feelings, when he looked back in retrospect on everything that happened years later after the book was written, he still felt compelled to come forward because his conscience weighed on him. I think that he's the kind of person that would have never wanted any kind of harm to come to Eric Richins. They were acquaintances, if not friends. And when he looked back on the entirety of his relationship with Kouri, I think the conscience just pushed him to go forward to police. As far as an immunity deal goes, I think he knows that he had nothing to do with it, and he has nothing to worry about in terms of legal consequences.
Sure. From an investigative standpoint, though, you always want a witness to come forward, even though, it's said that he was put forward by the plaintiff in the civil cases, a private investigator. We're going to talk a lot more about all of that. But he reached out to the victim's family after he felt guilty, just like he said. So this testimony, when you contrast it and compare it to Crozier and Lauber, the two informants, I think is a little bit more credible. But I want to talk a little bit about where the case stands at this point.
Mr. Bloodworth, the state's next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state calls Robert Josh Grossman.
Will you please raise your right hand?
This was
You
interesting.
solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury.
Sir.
No one has ever not just said, yeah, or so help me God, or yes, or whatever.
Or I affirm.
He's like, I don't know. I'm not going to lie. Probably not going to say everything.
So for those who can't hear what he said, he's got his hand raised. He's being sworn. This is our first introduction to him. So people are a little apprehensive to begin with.
This is like kickoff in football. Normally people sleep through this play.
And right off the bat, he's a problem. So people would think, because she's, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth under the penalty of perjury or whatever she said. And he's like, what do you mean by the whole truth? So the judge has to stop everything and get this straightened out. And this is how he did it.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth under the pains and penalties of perjury, yes or no?
I would tell as much in this setting. I assume all the answers, but not.
Stand right there for a moment, if you don't mind. Can I invite?
Okay, so this is what I found interesting about this clip. The judge says, stand right there for a moment. And he knows that's trouble in a sense.
Well, look at his posture. Do you see what he's doing? He's standing at ease.
He's standing at parade rest, actually.
And he had service overseas. He was told to stand right there. He's not standing at attention, but he is standing at ease with his hands behind his back.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that he had his hands up here, and the judge said, stand right there for a second. And he put his arm down immediately as if he were going to attention, like he was going to get his butt chewed. in the military. And then he went right to, just like you said, at ease or parade rest or whatever. So he's just standing there looking at the judge. He's still looking forward. He's not even looking at the judge, and the judge is having to send the jury out of the room.
I invite you folks to take a walk for a moment. Please rise for the jury.
This is another attribute I love about this judge, by the way.
Mr. Grossman, do you understand the difference between what's true and what's not true?
I do.
Do you promise, under the pains and penalties of perjury, to tell the truth when you're asked questions?
Absolutely.
Anything further, Mr. Bloodworth?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Lewis?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Would you bring the jury back in?
Kept the trial moving. Like, hey, prosecution, do you have anything? Defense, do you have anything? We all clear? Bring the jury back in. Very, very effective as a judge, in my opinion.
It was a bad look in front of the jury, though, because we all know that it's a yes or no question.
Yeah. So it's good that I think the prosecution suggested, hey, since you chased them away and now all of a sudden he's sitting in the witness box, can you at least explain a little bit what happened? And he does that.
We had a hiccup, but we got it sorted out. He's sworn in. He's under oath now.
Yeah, he clears it up right here.
Mr. Grossman, just to confirm, you have sworn an oath to tell the truth, correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. What, sir, is your name?
I'm going to tell you right now, John, I was one way about this guy, and by the end of his testimony, I was another way. And I don't know which way you think. I can ask your prediction about what, how you felt about this guy before, during, and after. But what do you think before we even get into this?
I thought with refusing to easily come under oath, I expected him to be somewhat hostile, but I think he felt compelled to be there, but I think he is very sorry. And I think he is very embarrassed. But I maintain that I believe that he loves Kouri very much. In spite of how strange all that is, I think that he is sad that he is there.
Robert Joshua Grossman.
Sir, do you know Kouri Richins?
I do.
How do you know her?
I've known her for, a decade probably at this point. We met in South Carolina. She was flipping a house, and I answered, and a help wanted ad.
Did there come a time you moved to Utah?
Yes.
And why did you move to Utah?
To work with her, help her flip houses. I had my dog with me. We do live-in flips, me and the dog.
Actually, that's a very endearing moment. It sounds very sincere, but I also love that he felt he had to explain that it was him and the dog that did the flips, not him and Kouri.
I think it's important he explained it because he has an itinerant lifestyle. He lives in the flips, and how does he survive? Well, part of his survival, it depends on a cash flow from Kouri.
And me and the dog.
Did, sir, there come a time when your relationship turned romantic?
Yes.
About when?
Same time, just before driving to Utah.
I kind of paused on this moment because I think that he really had to deal with a lot of feelings within himself. And he may not have seen Kouri in person up to this point. But
I doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah. At that moment in the trial, he literally had to look at her to reckon what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to I'm going to let the moment play through, but it's going to play over again so you can catch what I'm talking about. I don't even think she made contact with him. I think he just needed to see where he was at with her. And if she can't even make eye contact, he knows.
Yeah.
So it'll play in a second here, but he looks right at her, then looks right up. I also want you to take note of her respiration rate. You could see it in her, like her white blouse is a plunging neckline, but you could see her chest moving up and down. She's very nervous throughout this whole thing. She, from the neck above, she appears very calm. And in this instance, she's not showing a lot of emotion. In some of the other ones, she is.
I like to watch it at 2x speed, but when you do that, you can really see when she gets very, very fidgety and when she's breathing hard.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I did the same thing. I thought it was me, but you could see it on the witness stand too. It's more pronounced when people are moving around and fidgety.
During that time that you were romantically involved with Miss Richins, did you love her?
Yes.
Oh man.
During that time,
look at her above the muscles above her eyes, not the muscles above her eyebrows. We'll call them. They're just it's sadness. You could tell she's sad, maybe because the gravity of everything is hitting her, or because she put this guy through this, or she's sad that he turned on her, whatever. I'm sure there's a lot of emotions going through, but you could tell she's wearing a lot of this weight here.
Yeah.
Did you feel that she loved you?
Yeah. I have a tendency of going head over heels, though, probably more than most. So
That's kind of a big admission from a hard military man. And it also kind of implies that he wonders some nights, maybe when he's staying up too late and he's had one glass too many, whether or not he was played as a chump.
Yep.
you know, I think she did.
Did you exchange text messages with Kouri Richins?
Yes,
From the time you moved to Utah, about how often?
daily, unless she was mad at me or vice versa.
What topics on those messages did you discuss?
Same thing you would discuss with your best friend, plus house flipping stuff, life.
You discuss her children?
Yes.
Sir, I'm going to show you now some text messages between you and Ms. Richins.
Okay.
So we're just going to look at a few because these texts have already been played in court. We've seen them in previous episodes that we've done. What we haven't done yet is kind of look at what they actually tell an investigator about the timing. So when they're being shown, we're just going to show a couple of them, by the way. Just take note of the dates, because if you'll remember, there was a very famous Valentine's Day incident. And then Eric Richins' death itself was, I think, March 3rd or March 4th or something like that. So just keep an eye out for the dates.
Those are pretty small. If you need people to zoom
Yeah.
in, you can.
Is that good enough for you to identify them, or do you want to zoom in and step through them?
I mean, if you could zoom in a hair, that wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
Very contractory language.
Was I supposed to be reading them at that clip?
No, I just,
Right there?
what I'm going to ask
Okay.
you, the
I got
question for you, sir.
You cannot, you can't buy that much sincerity. Like, you can't buy genuine as this guy is. Like,
I know that he has said, "Ah, shucks," at some point.
he has. I mean, he's just a man's man, kind of like, just yeah, I'll build you
He's
stuff,
down
and
to earth.
I'm nice, and you're right, and like, I'm not going to take any shit. I mean, he's definitely not who I thought he was when we had the little incident when he was swearing.
Do you recognize this as a text exchange that you had with Ms. Richins?
I got you. And I do for this one.
Okay.
It's draining to love you. My heart is burning with sadness to have read that. Like it popped out of my chest and someone is stomping on it. I'm sorry, I'm draining to love. I knew this one would come one day. Just was hoping it wasn't today or anytime soon, because I love you and I love talking to you. I love being with you and laughing and joking and venting and being overly happy with news I got today. So he talked about how they were best friends and how they were in love. And I think the affair that was going on between them was very much an emotional one, and it wasn't strictly sexual.
Okay, take note of this date, which is, what's that, December 18th, 2023?
Yep.
Okay, the next one that's from her, by the way.
Love triangle. What do you mean by that? I don't get it.
Right. So she identified it as a love triangle, that they're all involved in this love triangle, and that it can't go on forever.
Yeah.
And he's like, love triangle? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm married, and you, me, and our relationship, I don't know what else to call it. A situationship is what the kids would call it. I'm in love with a man that's not my husband. It seems like she's admitting some truth there that's hard to admit, but also there's guilt laced throughout on her part for the feelings that she does have for him. And I think that's important to put forward, because the prosecution's making the case that she's motivated by her feelings or her wish for an ideal life with Robert Grossman, but she does feel guilt even as the affair is going on, Drew.
Yeah, she's either guilt or she's trying to figure out a way to navigate around it.
I meant what I said yesterday. I'll always love you, handsome. And if it's okay, can we talk tomorrow? I want to go to sleep as happy as I was when I woke up with you this morning. I won't misinterpret anything, or I hope I don't, until I talk to you about it more. I'm sorry, babe. So they did mention that they have fights or disagreements sometimes. I think if they're heavily emotionally involved and the situation is fraught with danger that is being discovered, and they have to communicate often by way of text message, I think that sometimes text messages can be misinterpreted and they can have emotional clashes. That was from the 18th. Like, actually in love with me, if I was divorced right now and ask you to marry me tomorrow, would you? So this is completely different. This characterizes the relationship on a whole new level, to say you're in love with me. And I think that's even more than just saying I love someone. You can love your buddy, you can love your friends, But in love, I think, is the deepest level, and I think it's a huge confession that they breached there. And that's the 15th, so that would be the day after the Valentine's Day sandwich attempted massacre.
The first near miss.
Yes, in love with YOU. Of course I would, saying, of course I would marry you. A reply on the 15th. Babe, I miss you. I want you today, every day, not just sexually, but physically, mentally, every day when I wake up. I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. If I could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you. I don't know what my deal is today. I'm sorry. So I think this is just a lot of fantasy talk. People will say this is essentially her motive, is that she wants this perfect life. She wants to cut the corner that is her husband, skip to the end, get to the money, get to Mr. Grossman. But I think it's just emotional venting. I think it's just her being unhappy about life and her talking about where she'd rather be. This is on the 19th.
Yeah, I think it's emotional venting. I think, though, they're both coming to grips with the fact that they feel comfortable around each other enough to be able to do that also.
I think it's also an admission that at some point they're doomed, that there's no way for them to figure it out. And I guess to play my own devil's advocate a little bit, if she feels like the situation is on a collision course with destiny or doom, or it's going to end and everyone's feelings are going to be hurt, she may be feeling differently about taking control over the situation.
So these texts are, like, depending on which one of us you talk to, very circumstantial, or it's building a circumstantial case. But there's some testimony coming up, and I really want you to watch his face when we get to this next moment. It's actually the line that I think we need to talk about.
Sir, did there come a time after Eric Richins' death when you met up with Kouri?
Yes.
Do you recall the first time?
Yes.
About when was that?
I'd guess 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that.
What happened when you met up with him?
I forget where we met, but we rode up into the Uinta Mountains together. Two vehicles, I think. I can't remember. We both wound up in hers, though, in her vehicle. We sat there and talked.
Did you talk about Eric?
Yes. Yep. That was the first opportunity to really, that was the first time.
So this was after Eric's death.
Did there come a time during that discussion that Kouri Richins asked you about killing?
Do you want me to contextualize it?
Please.
So yeah, we sat there and talked for quite a while, and I had never seen her that way, obviously. It was a heavy conversation, and I'm not used to that with her. She's not used to being open like that. So at one point, my opinion then, probably still now, looking back, was that, she was looking for any reason. I think she was exhausted emotionally. And I think she was looking for a reason to divert the conversation away from herself, because she does that. She does that about lots of things in every normal life, And I think that's what she did. She asked me, go ahead. I'll let you ask. I know you.
Sure.
But
did she ask you a question about killing?
she did ask me if I.
So he's answering a lot of stuff in his head and just kind of like reaffirming it outside of his head. Like he doesn't realize that we don't hear what his head is, what the inside of his head is thinking. I don't think.
I think he's playing back to the coaching sessions he had with the prosecution, because he says, well, I'll let you ask, and then,
yeah, that's true.
Do you want me to properly contextualize this? For all his shucks demeanor and his blue collar ethos, which is very evident, this is a very, very intelligent man. He's very emotionally deep. He's very troubled. I could tell that he's kind of a ponderous guy. He lives with his dog in these houses that he flips. He probably lives in his head most of the time.
Yeah.
And him being very intelligent and very sweet is probably why she was attracted to him.
Yeah.
And I think that he's been eaten up with guilt for a long time, but even still, it doesn't make today any easier. Again, if you watch his posture, he's shrugging all the time. I mean, it looks like his clothes don't fit. He couldn't be less comfortable up there on the stand.
Yeah, he's definitely squirming a lot in the chair, and he's making a lot of like protective gestures and self. Yeah, but I also think too that he's running through the whole thing, and the prosecutor is trying to give him enough space to be able to reckon with it however he needs to get to the answer. I thought that it was kind of like, he's saying, well, in my opinion, she was emotionally drained, and nobody objected to that. The judge didn't like, everyone just let it keep rolling. And eventually we got to the answer that
you make a good point. I mean, it doesn't matter in terms of, anything to do with the case, but that did call for speculation.
right. He's, he's not qualified really to say that. I mean, I guess he can render an opinion about how she was feeling in the moment. But
it almost did feel a little bit like therapy, though.
yeah.
What sir did she ask?
She asked if I had ever killed anybody.
And was that specific to killed anybody while serving in Iraq?
Right,
Did you respond?
I did.
Did she ask a follow-up question?
Okay, so what I noticed about that is, first of all, his face, like he's not real proud of any of this. Like,
No.
I'm sure that he is quite the patriot and he's proud of his service, but if you'll notice, he's not asked anything further about it. He's
Iraq,
just,
yeah.
he never has to say, yeah, I told her I had, or no, I told her I didn't. But the next question is framed so that you know the answer to it.
Well, the prosecution is actually amazing here, because even though he presents himself as something of a universal monster or someone that would easily hang out with Count Chocula, he seems to have a great deal of humanity here. He knows that Robert Grossman looks best when he's left to just answer the most wide open questions. Did she respond? Did you answer to that? And you can see from his downcast posture that you're right. He's not, his memories of what happened to him in Iraq haunt him. And I think that that's where his guilt compounds, because to think about what he did in Iraq, because he was ordered to do so, because it was his mission or it was for his country, for him to think about him being the reason why Eric died, I think it eats him up.
Yeah. So like from an interviews and interrogation standpoint, and I'm sure you see this from negotiations or from hearing it firsthand on 911, because you're the first responder. Like you hear people as they process these emergencies, but you can see his posture leaning forward. He's not proud of any of this. And he's quite sad about the whole thing. Like he's not proud. He's not boasting about anything. He's not proud of anything, but think of the weight that he's carrying. He's now not only talking about what happened in Iraq, which he probably doesn't like to talk about too much, maybe, I'm guessing. Now it's being brought into a conversation from his lover, whose husband just died, and it's a out of the blue question at that period in their life and in their relationship. It's out of the blue. He doesn't know anything about her being involved or possibly being involved, and she's like, "You ever killed anybody? And how did you feel about it?" And so now you fast forward to this moment, and if I were interviewing him or interrogating him, this would be the reassuring kind of tap on the shoulder, like, "Hey, I'm with you. You're doing good. Like, this is hard. This is very hard. Like, this is compounded trauma that he's dealing with. He's dealing with what happened in Iraq. Now he's dealing with what happened with Kouri, and he's having to tell both. He's having to put it in a sandwich and serve it to the jury. And it's not easy. It's just not easy, not an easy thing to do."
Yes.
Sir, what was that follow-up question?
She asked me how it made me feel or something along those lines, and then I answered her.
I think he had the courtroom eating out of his hand at that point, and then I answered her.
Yeah.
So if you look, speaking of the courtroom or the audience, if you're tired of the media sensationalizing these cases, you want actual operational analysis. That's exactly what we do here every week. We would love it if you joined us, hit subscribe. You can even join our channel, and there's members only content that we talk about. John, we're at the point in this case where he's having to expose his shame and grief, and his shame and exposure, and weigh it against his grief. And he has very grown-up decisions to make. Who do I help? Why do I help them? And I think that the defense asking him questions really kind of solidified his decision, whether it was the right one or not.
Never for a moment did I have a clue, a hint, not a fleeting thought that something intentionally might have happened to him, right?
Right.
Let alone from her. So, I think we'd gone a year without speaking at that point, and I don't know if I turned on the truck radio and heard she wrote a book and wasn't surprised, but then I started, I listened to the interview she gave about her book, and then Maybe I did some research on my phone and saw that she had just been arrested, or either she just got arrested, I don't know, days later, a week later.
Okay. And then do you recall who you met with when you talked about this conversation?
After I found that out, I was overwhelmed with, guilt, sorrow over my wrongdoings, infidelity.
Okay.
And that's when I called. I was trying to get a hold of.
I want to just take a moment to just praise this guy's moral conscience, because a lot of times, the third wheel, the guy on the side, they don't view what they're doing as infidelity. They think that the person who's married is the adulterer or the person who's being unfaithful, but he puts it on his shoulders as well, that he was as guilty as she was in that.
Yeah.
Eric's sister, to tell her I don't think she was home. I spoke with her husband instead, told him what I told him, and he told me, I forget the guy's name, but he said, I think there's somebody that would like to talk to you. And it was the Richins family private investigator. I think I called him immediately after I hung up, spoke with him. I don't recall the ins and outs of the conversation, but he told me that Kouri had done it, that she was guilty. He couldn't tell me why, but she and that changed everything for me. I was blown away, and
I think that's a critical moment right there that the defense is going to pounce on. So you had misgivings. You felt guilty about your own activities, which is something that you need to resolve on your own. You felt compelled to come forward, and now you talk to a private investigator who's been hired by the Richins family, who, by the way, is suing Kouri Richins for, I think, $10 million. And this agent for the Richins family puts in his mind or affirms his suspicions that Kouri did in fact do this. I think this is where the well might get tainted on what Robert Grossman actually thinks. Maybe he was suspicious, maybe he felt guilty, but now he's been told that his suspicions are indeed confirmed that she did necessarily do this. But why does the $10 million matter? Because you have to remember that everybody's after the money, not only Eric Richins' estate, the money from the book, but also custody of the kids. I think the Richins family is completely invested in taking custody of the children. They don't care if their mother goes to prison forever. They also want that $10 million, and they know that it'll be a lot easier for them to win the civil suit if they can win this criminal case. Drew?
Yeah, it's a very important fact that these private investigators are involved in this. There are actually two. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but we're also going to have an entire episode on one of those private investigators. I'll let you guess.
I'm like looking at everything in our past with a different set of goggles on through different lenses, and I was trying to figure out if she did it and I could help. That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, this is kind of important. There are two PIs working on this. One is the family's PI, as we've discussed ad nauseum, that he was hired as part of the civil suit, but he's turning information over to law enforcement quite frequently, and there's discussion about that. And I think that it's probably in Grossman's best interest that he came forward, because they were eventually going to find him.
Oh, they were always going to talk to Grossman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But so I think his conscience got the best of him, but it also worked out in the end. But there's a track too.
What worries me is that him having a big conscience is somebody like the Richins can see this as somebody that they can easily exploit or maneuver.
Yeah. I mean, like at what cost though? There's a human element to this, because, we can never forget that we've lost a father in this whole thing. And yeah, like there's an abundance of guilt. And I think in 2026, and I'm not saying you, John, but in 2026, people misguide or take people's intentions wrong a lot of the time. Like, like this guy, like you could say Josh Grossman is trying to get his 60 seconds of fame or 60 minutes of fame or whatever, or that he was just trying to clear his conscience or whatever. But what if it's altruistic? What if he's had a moment of divinity or like?
I have no doubt that that's exactly what happened. But, they also, and even if it wouldn't change anything, they're ready to pounce on there, and they're ready to exploit that for their financial gain. I mean, I'm sure that it's great for, Robert Josh Grossman that he has this moment of expiation for his sins. That's great. But I don't think the Richins family really cares about that so much as they do $10 million is my point.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to see their brother ever again or their son ever again. So I think I tend to agree that it's more probably about the children, but it's probably more also about like, you're not going to do this, get away with it, and get away with everything else.
Does that conversation seem like it was a strange conversation to you?
Man, I can't tell one way from the other anymore. I've been confused for years, you know.
This conversation was about more than just what you did in Iraq, right?
Yeah.
This conversation, was it about just life and death in general?
Yeah, it was about that. It was about lots of things. It was about the boys. It was about shooting a bow. It was about God. It was about supernatural stuff.
And at the time you were having the conversation, did it seem like a strange conversation back at the time it happened?
At the time it happened, her and I just experienced supernatural things. So no, there was nothing that was surprising at that. But the talk was not surprising.
So it was in context with things that were going on and that you were talking about at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aren't you dying to know what the supernatural things were?
Well, no, I think that they were probably having a cosmic conversation about whether or not they were meant to be together, and what is God's plan, and does God use terrible tragedies like this to advance his agenda? I could see a guy like this who clearly has a connection with God questioning, and how could God's plan be to fulfill something that would make him happy and be his life's plan, but also be necessarily manifest so much evil in order to make that happen?
Yeah.
Do you know why you were talking about bow hunting? Why was that part of this? It seems a little different than the rest of the conversation.
She was talking about she was talking good things about Eric and how phenomenal of a man. And
These are the body okay, so when I talk about interviews and interrogations in previous episodes, and this one in particular, these are the body language gesture clusters that I'm talking about. What he's saying comes across as genuine, but it's also very difficult for him to talk about. And this like stretching maneuver and all these other things he's doing, shifting in his chair, and it's just nervous energy. He's got a ton of stuff going on. So the way you're able to separate deception from what he's doing in that chair is that his attention is divided. Therefore, like his body is making him do things and he's having to control that. And when you're being deceptive, you're trying to control the words that are coming out of your mouth also. Yeah. And you're trying to keep them in line, and it never works. So he's just naturally flowing out with words that are hard to say, and his body is expressing the same stress. Everything is kind of in congruence, but these are the gesture clusters that we talk about.
I think he's been tensed up this entire time, and the pain finally caught up with him. He had to stretch his back because he didn't know. It's like clenching your jaw the entire time. Eventually, you're just aching.
That's a great point. And by the way, when somebody is, when you're interviewing or interrogating somebody and they're about to either, you're getting close to the confession or you're getting close to the peak moment of the conversation, they open up like a flower. They literally open up like a flower. I can show you example after example, and there's one right there for you. He just opened up like, all of this is coming off my chest here.
I don't know. And she mentioned that how good her boys were, or I can't remember. One of them can, one of them can't at that time.
Bow hunt?
Well, I don't know. It was one of them was shooting a bow, one of them wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember. But
so she wanted to learn to shoot a bow. Is that what that was about?
she did. She told me that.
Okay.
Or she already knew how. I don't remember.
Look at her. Look at the sadness in her eyes.
She's remembering those better times. She wishes she was back there, or maybe she wishes you could change it.
Yeah, I think, again, this is probably a moment where she's like, I can't believe I did this to this guy. He really is that, like, she's probably thinking I chose I chose the right guy. I probably shouldn't have done what I did to the other one. So here's this text message. It's pretty damning. Like, actually in love with me. If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, would you? So this is right after the literal day after. Like, she may not have even known if her husband didn't wake up or not.
When you and Kouri were together, were you aware that Eric had an affair also?
I was told that.
All right.
He's saying, yeah, I was told that, which is kind of like, it's not the same thing. I don't have any proof of that. I didn't use that as my judgment as to whether or not we should be together. That's the way I took that anyway. But I think, the defense is kind of trying to vilify Eric in this, in a sense, to show like, yeah, she wasn't the only one having an affair here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you could state your name, please, and spell your last name.
My name is Becky Lloyd, Lloyd.
Where do you work?
I work for C&E Stonemasonry.
And how long have you worked there?
I've worked there 5 years.
Do you know Eric Richins?
I did.
How long did you know him for?
I met him sometime around 2017.
Okay. And what about Kouri Richins? Do you know her?
I do.
And did you meet her around the same time?
Yeah. I knew her as a neighbor. I knew her as the mother to my children's friends, and I knew her as my own friend.
What else did Kouri say during that conversation about her marriage with Eric?
Okay, so to set the stage, they were wrapping gifts together, these two. Kouri and this employee of the stonemasonry business, but she was Kouri's friend as well. And they're wrapping Christmas gifts together, which is important because if you'll remember, there is a text message to Grossman right around Christmas, right? They're wrapping gifts for like underprivileged kids. That's what the company, the masonry company used to do around Christmas time. And they start having this conversation about the state of both of their marriages because this young lady that's on the stand had just been divorced. And Kouri is kind of getting ready to spill some beans about what's going on in their relationship.
She talked about how she was feeling trapped. She was feeling like there wasn't an easy way forward out of the marriage. She felt like she was worried about her kids. She was worried that she was going to lose them and that Eric was going to take the kids from her and that his family was going to turn the community against her. And she said that in many ways it would be better if he were dead.
What's her facial expression say to you right there?
She seems like she's in disbelief, like she's never heard this before, or that she can't believe that just got said. And I also want to know how, this was allowed to be said in front of the jury. I guess this is a statement against interest, but there's no proof that she actually said this. Was there?
I don't know.
What was the tone of Kouri's voice during that conversation?
The furrowed brow is just screaming, "Excuse me?"
It was serious. She definitely had a very serious tone. We weren't really joking. It was a very honest conversation and a very heartfelt conversation. And you could tell from her body language that, she was frustrated and she was struggling with where she was at. Yeah, it was a serious tone.
What was your reaction to Kouri saying it would be better if Eric were dead?
To me, it really signified just how far their marriage was off track and how serious the situation was. And I felt bad for both of them. That's a heavy conversation.
And this was all in 2024 when you brought it up
So now the defense is cross-examining her, and they're going to have their moment.
to the investigator?
My friend conversation would have been in 2021, right about the exact same, probably within a couple days of that conversation initially with Kouri.
And you would agree that if Kouri was planning to kill her husband 60 days later, it probably wouldn't be a really smart thing for her to say to you, hey, it'd be better off if he were dead, would it?
Now make your objection that the question is complete, Ms. Shervin.
It doesn't matter now.
Okay.
Go ahead, you can answer.
Say it again, please. I'm so sorry.
If Kouri Richins was planning to kill her husband in about 70 days after she made that statement to you, it wouldn't be a really smart thing to tell someone like you, hey, it'd be better off if he were dead, would it?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you have
I think that my answer would be, I'm not here to testify that she's smart.
What's interesting is that question getting asked multiple times is that
Yes.
it still kind of has that effect on the jury, is that it doesn't matter that she doesn't answer the question or that the question now, isn't technically a part of jury deliberations. It's still in their minds. But I guess I'll say about this is that it's been several years since Eric died. Everyone looks back on all of the behavior that Kouri was doing before that happened. And it is all like Grossman said, they're looking at it through new goggles, through new lenses. They're looking at it through the hindsight of murder. And I wouldn't be surprised if Kouri had a conversation with this woman about how desperate the state of the things were in their marriage. But at no point was it characterized as murderous intent.
Same objection.
Doesn't call for speculate.
It's sustained.
Okay. Did you ever ask Kouri directly, what did you mean when you said that to me on December 17th?
No.
You never gave her the opportunity to explain whether she was just venting, whether she was joking, whether she was serious?
Unfortunately, no.
I think this is a win for the prosecution here, because the defense is now asking her, you didn't give her a chance to rectify or ask her why she said it, which is a conclusion. You said it.
Follow that up. Are you actually going to kill your husband? No one would ask that. People say, I'm mad, I'm going to kill that guy. Nobody ever asks, like, now hold on a second. Did you just express premeditated homicidal intent?
No, I realize that. I'm saying that the defense has now said that she actually said it. They just confirmed that she said it. They're not arguing that she said, they are arguing what she meant by it.
Well, you can have it both ways, I think.
And you had a long time to do that before you reported it to this investigator, didn't you? As a friend.
I suppose so.
Yeah, that's all I have to think.
So we have this investigative convergence. Everything you just heard about Grossman is definitely real. So now I just kind of want to show you what happened to the physical evidence in the same week, because what you saw there was the real deal. You had the family PI's influence who kind of pushed him into like, yeah, we think he did it, or we think she did it, which could taint his testimony in a sense. And then there's this other witness testimony that we had that kind of matches. Where was she obtaining illicit street drugs, or was she obtaining illegal substances to poison him with, or was it the wrong, like fentanyl / OxyContin? But he's been confused for years. And the family PI communicated with Grossman before this thing. The defense angle is that his perspective was entirely shaped by the PI. Therefore, it's not really, it's an opportunity to poke holes, just like they have when they've tried to destroy the evidence chain with this fentanyl. What do you think?
I think that's exactly what the defense is trying to do. And, he says he's been confused for years. That means he doesn't know how to properly contextualize her asking about whether or not he'd killed before. What did it mean? But he came forward with his confusion and his contrite conscience about all of his behavior. And I do think this private investigator saw him as an asset to be seized, as a force to be employed for their ultimate end, which is the conviction of Kouri Richins. And in that sense, I do see it as I think it's a little bit contaminated that he was only told one thing about his suspicions and that they were confirmed.
Right. To push back, I would say that the only thing he is testifying to is what he's asked about. He's not really, he's definitely, I think, proven that there was a definite love between those two. Her text messages tell the story that she wanted her husband out of the picture and him into the picture. He can bridge that gap. And perhaps there was a little priming on the
to push back, though. I mean, she asked him, like, okay, so in the moment when she asked you, how did you feel about killing somebody? It didn't suddenly dawn on him like, oh my God, Kouri, did you kill Eric? Like he said, he didn't even have a fleeting thought about it. At that time, the question, especially in the midst of the supernatural conversations that they're having, life, death, what does it all mean? It didn't throw him for a loop. It wasn't until years later, when he was further contaminated by the news, hearing about her arrest, that he had to go back and question that conversation. At the time that it happened, he had no questions about her guilt at all. It didn't even occur to him.
I wonder, John, and it's all speculation. I wonder, though, if he had answered a certain way, if she was on the verge of telling him everything. So, look, I'm going to tell you something. In week one, I thought that the supply chain was a lot cleaner, and that it turned out to not be that. And I'm naming that because it matters in how we look at this case right now. So Crozier recanted in week one, right? He's saying, yeah, I sold, but I didn't sell fentanyl. I sold OxyContin. Then Lauber had an issue with a drug court violation that didn't come to light necessarily. And we're going to get into that in a second. But where do you stand on the circumstances and the human testimony versus the well, I don't want to say it's non-human testimony, but the voluntary testimony versus the under protection testimony.
I haven't been moved at all by this. I mean, we're having to rely on drug dealers to begin with. I think there's a lack of credibility. I think that they'll say whatever they think is in their best interest. And as I said last week, it's not just criminal stuff. So you could say immunity, should make them go up there and tell the truth. But wrongful death suits potentially hanging over them. All of them have been advised by their own independent attorneys what's at stake for them. And we're dealing with just not the best people. And the problem is that we can't put the fentanyl in Kouri's hands, because then the credibility problem would go away. We would just naturally conclude that the fentanyl came from them. And we also can't conclude that the Kouri ever put that in his cup on that fateful night, that in spite of everything that she thought, anything that she might have said to any employees of the masonry business, there's no proof that anything that she was feeling compelled her to take any action against Kouri between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. on that fateful night.
We're on the record. Please proceed.
Thank you. This morning at 8:30, Ms. Nestor received a text from the state, which none of us saw until we were sitting here in court, where they have now provided documentation that Ms. Lauber did in fact violate drug court during the time that after she was cooperating in this case. That's Giglio information. I did not have that information to cross her with. They further, for the first time, disclosed the text messages between her and Detective Maynard that I asked her about. What's in these text messages should have been available. I could have used this on cross-examination. It's different than what she testified to. This is Giglio that was not given to us, and we move for a mistrial.
Okay, pause. So you're calling it Giglio information because you believe it is information that is material to impeachment of one of the state's witnesses?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any basis to say that the state had it before Ms. Lauber was put on the stand?
Well, this was information that we requested. It was information we requested when we tried to get.
Answer my questions.
Well, if they've requested it, that means that all parties knew about it, and they shouldn't have proceeded to trial until they had it.
Yes, it belonged to Detective Maynard. Detective Maynard had this information and sent an email to Mr.
So they're saying that this is a Brady violation, some kind of exculpatory evidence has been withheld from them?
Yeah, Giglio violation, which just goes hand in hand with Brady. Brady is more, I think, for the witnesses themselves, like the humans. And I think, if I'm characterizing this right, Giglio is more of a matter of like evidentiary stuff.
Bloodworth about the violation prior to the trial starting.
Mr. Bloodworth.
I'm not entirely sure what text message this defense received this morning. It was not from me. I've not heard of it until just now. I think they're referencing a violation of probation involving she was caught with an alcoholic beverage. Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct.
I provided that information to defense maybe 3 weeks ago in an email.
Okay. Ms. Lewis, I'm not going to shoot from the hip on this. You'll have to put this in a written motion so I can see it all with the timeline and the content. Let the state respond to it.
Yes, I can. I will just state for the record, the email about the alcohol violation was sent to Mr. Bloodworth November 15th of 2023.
Well, but what about Mr. Bloodworth's email to defense that he just read?
I saw no such email.
Okay, well, we'll get into it, but you've got to put this in writing. We're not going to do this on oral representations in the moment.
Understood.
Okay.
We saw this during the Donna Adelson trial, where they were trying to argue some matters that should have been argued pre-trial. They were trying to sort it out in the middle of the trial while the jury was actively engaged in the trial. And I remember the judge was absolutely not having it. He was far more pissed off.
Yeah, and this judge is so right in just saying, like, slow down. I'm not going to rule on a mistrial just based on what you're telling me here. I need it in writing. I need to, check it against the timeline. It may very well be true, but we're not going to just like do it right here and right now. So I mean, it kind of does call into a few questions about the, there's two supply chain witnesses that are now compromised potentially because, there was a violation with this alcoholic beverage of Carmen Lauber, which violated her probation, which means that the defense could have asked her about that on the stand to further kind of complicate her credibility in front of the jury. So I think that's kind of where they're getting at with this. But, you know, the physical delivery definitely still remains the weakest point in this whole thing. And if they can discredit Carmen Lauber by doing that, by all means, they're going to. But the important thing too, John, is that the judge likes to slow things down and think about things pragmatically.
Do you have one other issue, Your Honor? I know that it is always tradition that the state gets to sit closest to the jury in every trial I've ever been in. That's the case, and we actually prefer it that way. But we are getting reports from individuals who are watching this matter on television, that particularly yesterday, but also previously to yesterday, that members of the prosecution team are making faces at the jury during our cross-examinations, and we would ask that
With respect, I have a better view of this than any of the cameras. I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay, well, we've asked for the timestamps, and we're going to try to provide it to the court, but all I'm asking is just a gentle admonishment that that's not appropriate, and to try to refrain from doing that to the extent that is happening.
I'm not going to admonish anybody for anything that isn't happening. The only faces I've seen are counsel at me. And so I think we're well within the proper bounds of appropriate conduct from what I can see from here.
Right.
Anything else?
We'll submit it in a motion, Your Honor.
Okay.
So if you're asking me whether this case survives with the totality of everything we saw and the YouTube jury and everything else, I think it does. But I thought the supply chain was a lot cleaner than it turned out to be. So I'm kind of watching the lead detective closely. I think that's what's going to be the definitive, like what his how his procedural, you know, what he did, and that should be sometime, you know, this week, which means we'll put it in an episode next week. So Detective O'Driscoll is the main investigator. I don't know. What's your opinion on the case?
I can't wait to cover the private investigator next week. If you haven't watched the entire private investigator testimony, I'm talking about neck brace guy. Look for the thumbnail of him in the neck brace. It was fascinating to watch the defense try to take him down, and he was resolute and impervious. And I think it raises actually big questions. It's not like this has never come up before, that a private investigator has come forward with important evidence to the state. But the defense is trying to claim that they're doing an end run about the Constitution, and that investigators and prosecutors in this case are coming about poisonous fruit from poisonous trees, and that it can't be undone at this point. And the rulings on that could have a huge effect going forward, because, you know, Drew, I'm interested in your take on this, because traditionally the cops do not like private investigators, but this time you're working hand in hand to get old Kouri prosecuted and convicted.
Yeah, I
can't wait to get those takes from you.
I would go as far as to say, in this case, it's the other way around. The prosecutor, the private investigator is not a big fan of the cops. It would seem. I don't know. But we'll hash it out in the next episode. We thank you for being here. But don't forget to like and subscribe this. We thrive on your comments. We answer, as John characterized it, 99.1% of your comments, I believe.
99.9. I think you've been doing better than me. You're not.
I've been doing better.
100, but you're just about as there. You're approximately at 100.
Right. We answer approximately 99% of your comments. So leave one for us, and share us with your friends and family. And next episode will definitely be very intriguing and entertaining. I guarantee it.
Consider becoming a member. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Drew, great episode. 1,000 episodes of Comm Center.
10,000 hours.
Make sure you watch these prior episodes on the Kouri Richins case. Very worth watching. Make sure you catch up. Don't let a Kouri Richins episode go unwatched. And check out all of our other great episodes too.